how many times in my life people have been surprised to know that I have a doctorate. How many boys in school were surprised to see my report card on report card day. And like the shock. Now I live for that, but it does something. I'm like, there's a dissonance here that this is surprising to you.
Hola, hola. Welcome to Entre Tías y Amiguis, the podcast where we dive into the wild roller coaster ride of adulting. I'm your host, Adri Rodriguez, a queer Salvadorian native, a first-gen trailblazer, and licensed psychotherapist, here to share wisdom, stories, and real talk with my tías and amiguis to inspire and uplift our community. I want to remind you that while I am a licensed psychotherapist, this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Now let's dive into today's conversation and explore the journey of adulting together. Grab your cafecito, get comfy, and let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Entre Tías y Amiguis. I'm so excited to have a very dear friend of mine here today. We came across each other about a year ago now.
Right.
I'm so excited to have Doctora Aeriell Armas with us today, who runs an amazing account called Grad Life Grind. And I want to hear everything about how you got here, but usually how I have my guests start is introducing themselves with kind of like the origin story. How did you get to where you're at now? But also any identities that sort of frame your introduction, right? For me, I always talk about being a therapist, but I'm a therapist who's an immigrant, a therapist who's an eldest daughter, a therapist who's first gen. And all those experiences sort of inform my lens, even though I am a therapist trained in certain ways. There's like all these lenses that inform my views. As you introduce yourself, just like any identities that's important to mention, and take it away.
Well, I'm Doctora Aeriell Armas. I am first and foremost a daughter, a sister, a friend. Those are my mains whenever I introduce myself. I do have a PhD in clinical psychology. I'm originally from New York City. That informs everything that I do and the way that I see the world. I think that's a huge piece that I bring up with friends, clients, anyone that I work with, students. And I'm the founder of Grad Life Grind, which we'll talk a lot about in a moment. I'm a Christian, I'm a titi, I'm a therapist, and I'm now CEO and founder. So tons of hats I wear, things I do, researcher. It's hard to pick like just the core 3 or top 3 identities, but I think I'm just multi-passionate. So
why don't you tell me a little bit, because I was realizing that this is a conversation we haven't had. How did you decide you wanted to pursue a PhD in clinical psychology?
I have told this story a couple of times online and different podcasts, and I always think it's funny. So when I applied to graduate school, I was in my last year of college at the City College of New York in Harlem. And I went to college and did like 3 years. So I was in my 3rd and last year applying to graduate school. And when you start writing your grad essays, like personal statement and statement of purpose, a lot of times back then, the questions were like, how did you get interested in psychology? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like I've always wanted to do this. And so I went back to my mom and I was like, do you remember like me bringing this up or saying anything? Or like, when did I decide this? Because I remember being really, really young. Like all through high school, I already knew that I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. I don't even think I fully knew what that meant until much later. And she was like, I don't know, like you just came home one day, like around age 12. And I was like, obviously super dramatic. So she was like telling me in college that in middle school, I had to come home from school and sat her down and be like, Mom, have a seat. I want to tell you something. And she was like, okay. And I was like, I think I know what I want to do. And this was after I had already said, I want to be a dancer. I want to be a singer. I want to be a writer. I want to be an actress. I want to be, so she's like, okay, what else is new, right? And I'm like, I want to be a psychologist. And she was like, how do you even know what that is? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't remember this memory. She does. Right. So I don't know where I got that from or where I heard that, like probably in school or something. We did not have child psychologists in my school in New York. So I don't really know, but I was like, she was like, okay, so what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to work with kids and they're going to talk to me and I'm going to help them. And I don't work with kids now. So I just want to preface. And I didn't for most of my graduate career. Like I was not interested in doing child work. So I don't know where a lot of that came from initially. But I know that by the time I got to high school, I went to Townsend Harris in New York, which is a nerd school for just to briefly describe it. But it's one of the highest rated like schools in New York City. And it's public. But we were required to take college classes from senior year, I think. And we had the option in junior year. And so I took Psych 101 at the local college when I was a junior. So by then, by like, I don't know, 15 or 16, I already knew that this is what I wanted to do. And I was trying to rush which we'll talk about. But I was on this like fast track to finish as soon as possible and be as young as possible when I finish. And so I was like, okay, I was already looking online, like if I go get my PhD at NYU or whatever, I looked at their courses and I was like, okay, what's going to be required? And I was like, okay, I need a bachelor's first. And so I was like, what's required in a bachelor's? And I looked at the curriculum and I was like, okay, I need these classes, I need electives. And like, I was so, I don't know. I'm not this way now.
This is all happening when you're 16 years old?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm like going online, I'm like looking like, okay, I need Psych 101, I need electives. And so I was like, I'm going to use my college class free pass basically from my high school to get ahead and not like my friends were taking astronomy and like whatever easy A like they could get because of senior year
college credit.
Like, I don't want to, And I was like, no, I'm going to take the psychology classes so that I can shave off time from college because I know grad school is going to be really long. And there was no shaving anything there. I was misinformed about that as well. I thought you could, but I was just trying to finish as quickly as possible. I even thought about graduating high school early. And then my mom was like, are you sure that you don't want to have prom and you don't want to have graduation? You don't want to have any of these things? And I was like, no, never mind. I have FOMO. And so I finished high school like normal. But for some reason, I was just like obsessed with being done as soon as possible. Now, I mean, I'm 27. I graduated last year and I'm proud. And at the same time, I look back and I'm like, what was the rush, girl? Like, what? It's okay. So it's interesting. But yeah, I was on this fast track. There are a couple things that helped along the way. But at some point early, in puberty time, when I learned about what a psychologist was, something about it was like, that's what I want to do. And then I came home and told my mom that I never changed my mind. So after being like, I was like, I want to do a million things. So I think that's something about it stuck. And I think it's the perfect fit for me now that I'm on the other side.
It is always so fascinating to think about how all the roads and all the decisions and all the little moments that got here, because you made these decisions very young. And Aeriell at that age had to have some knowledge, knowing who you are now, had to have a way to put this together and say, this is a goal. This is like something that I want for myself. And even if you can't remember it, that version of you, that younger version, had already some wisdom that guided you here without, necessarily knowing the steps, but like the inner knowing.
Yeah. And I think that is the case, and that it felt at every step as I got closer that this was like a confirmation of this is my calling. Like, this is what I should be doing. A psychologist can do a lot of different things, and I mean all of that. Like, I think I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean I necessarily have to be in private practice or in academia, or it doesn't really matter, but I know that this is like the place I need to be in. And I had a lot of moments from high school to college to grad school to now where I'm like, oh, there's really nothing else that I should be doing, which is nice. And so there's been a lot of people that I think were strategically and perfectly placed into my life, a lot of prayer, a lot of grind, a lot of support, and a lot of I don't know what I'm doing kind of vibes to get here. And that's really what Grad Life Grind is born out of. My like reverse engineering when I was like 16 and trying to figure out how do I get to where I want to go and who do I ask and who do I talk to and how do I make this happen, knowing the barriers is what I do now, where I'm like, okay, how can I be the academic big sis? Is kind of you're like you're everyone's tia. In my family we say titi, so I was like about to say that, but I think I think of myself as like, okay, I'm your academic big sis. And there are people who have met me in person or talked to me online. They're like, I feel like I know you. I'm like, you do, like we're friends. And that's the energy that I want it to be. So that it's just a little bit like, even if it's like 5% less stressful and difficult for the next person, that's good enough for me. So it was born out of all the like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. And along the way, learn a lot of things that I just pretty much at every stage turned back around and like documented that. So when I was in year 4, I was talking about what I did in year 3. When I was in year 5, I was talking about what I did in year 4. And I started coaching people through the process pretty much I think by my 2nd or 3rd year of grad school. So I think it just meant a lot to me to be able to, I think I feel really grateful for all the people who were able to be like, oh, this is what you do. And like, let me show you and like put me on. And I think that that's something really powerful about our cultura. I just talked about this at NAMI Latino last 2 weeks ago, where I was like, one thing that I really love about the Latina community, specifically Latina women, is that like, we will push you on. Like, I know somebody that knows somebody and like, I'm going to give you their number and we're going to make this happen. And even if we never talk again. And so that's really the energy behind Grad Life Grind, where it's like, I know the person, I know the mentor, I know the school, I know the essay you need to write, like I got you. And I don't know where you're going to go after that. And I don't know if I'm ever going to talk to you again, but that's just what I think we need to be doing in a way that's not transactional. Just like, I just want to give this to you because I got that wisdom.
I really love that you gave yourself the opportunity to almost be like in this reflective space right after you completed it, and that you were able to put together the tools that you had used and pack them up and be able to share them. Because where my mind goes is like, I am 41, right? And so I'm like at this place where now I'm like, oh, let me share all these things. But the reality is that there's a lot of things that I don't even remember how I did them.
I was afraid of that. I think, I got into grad school 2018 in the spring, like around this time, I think. And then in June, I graduated. And then I deferred for 1 year. I didn't know what that word was. I worked at a hospital as a research assistant while I was in college, and I was like a volunteer. But I had to do an honors thesis, and they were like, you can have an RA. And I was like a research assistant. And I was the research assistant. So I was like, okay. And so I had someone who was probably like 10 years older than me that worked in the office and wanted to get a PhD in psychology and wanted research experience, and no one would give it to her. And I was like, I need help with my project. And I'm like 20 years old. And she was like, okay, I'll be a part of your study. She saw my flyer in the hospital for a study it was called Salsa for Schizophrenia. That's a conversation for another time. But it was really cute. And that was my idea for like how to merge culture and mental health and whatever. Anyways, so she was like an admin in the psych department. She saw my flyer and she had a dance background, and she was like, I want to get involved in research. I want to get a PhD later. Can I be part of your study? And I was like, I'm literally a kid, but yes. And so I was like, sure. And I taught her how to do what I needed her to do for this like project. And when I was going through the process of like, I got admitted to this school all the way in California. I live in New York. I'm 20 years old. I have no money. My family's all in New York. Like, what do I do? She was just like transcribing videos for me or something in the office with me. And I still remember like the lights were off. I don't know why. We were just like working independently. And I was like, I really don't know what to do. And she was like, ask for deferment. And I was like, what's that? I don't know if it was an age privilege or a racial identity privilege, whatever. She was this white woman. She's great. And she ended up leaving me her job afterwards. He told me that means you can like hold your spot and then go to school like the year later. And I had to like muster the courage to call the school that I ended up going to. And I was like, I don't know. They're going to say no. They're going to say we don't want you there. Like I had all of this like stuff because I didn't know any of this. And so I called and I was like, do you guys do deferment? And they're like, yeah, just pay your deposit and we'll see you next year. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I did that. And I was like, I never would have had this option. I would have had to like haul ass basically and move to California within 3 months of graduating with no money and start grad school right away because I thought that was my only option. And I didn't know what the term deferment meant. And a lot of people don't now either. And so I share it in my story a lot when I teach and do workshops and everything. And I was like, if this like white woman who happened to see my flyer, who happened to reach out to me, who happened to have a dance background and want to work on my project and was looking for the research experience from me, didn't show up in my life, I would have never heard that word ever. And everything would have been different about my life. So it's those like little moments where I'm like, if Grad Life Grind is that, where I'm like, hey, you should defer. And people are DMing me like, oh, I got into a program. What should I do? And I'm that, like, I can do that again. I think it's just really powerful. And so now I can look back and be like, okay, we need to, when I'm preparing my materials, I'm like, we need to talk about deferment. We need to talk about these little things that I would forget 10 years from now.
And I have forgotten. Yeah. Like, I think even part of some of my own therapy work, personal work, has been on actually taking myself back and recognizing that effort. Because when I was 16 years old, right, like you were in the middle of like figuring it out, making all these decisions. I immigrated when I was 16. I was learning English when I was 16. Like there is so many parts that we at that age, we're just kind of like, go, go, go. Because now at 41, they seem kind of magical. And I look forward to the day that we get to have this conversation. When I'll be 60 and then you'll be like 40 and then, or less than that, or something around there. But the way the wisdom grows, because even when I emailed you, I was preparing the interview for us and I was thinking about like, man, like I really wish I would have had somebody like Aeriell back in when I was like a little, undergrad going into grad school, because I totally went to grad school by pure accident because I didn't know what it took. But I had people that were like, what about this? And what about that? Yeah. My friend was applying to grad school and our boss was like, there was a couple of supervisors who were like writing letters and everything. And they were just kind of like, if you want to apply, we'll write you letters. But like literally, I didn't know. It's not that I don't want to, that I wasn't capable.
You don't realize it's an option.
I didn't know.
I didn't know. This is embarrassing. But also I think shares a lot about how hidden a lot of these things are. I didn't really understand the master's to therapist trajectory until I was already in my PhD program.
Wow.
I wouldn't have changed my mind because I think the PhD was the right fit for me because I wanted to do research, because I wanted to teach, because I wanted to do all the things that the PhD kind of requires. But I didn't get it. I was like, oh, for people who started with me, which just happened, people who started the PhD program with me, and they also were misinformed about what was about to happen in the next 5 years, it would have been better for them to go to an MSW, an MFT program, and just go straight into clinical work. And then you can have a private practice and you can have a wonderful life and you can make good money and not suffer to the extent that we have to for the PhD side. But I didn't even know. And I was like, dang, if I had wanted that, I made a big mistake. Thankfully, I'm on a different trajectory, but there were people who started with me and didn't finish because they were like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And that's another thing I try to help people avoid is like, I don't want you to commit to something like a PhD program or even a master's program and then realize this is not what you thought it was. I just did a post about my year by year breakdown, not including the jobs that I had outside of school. Transparently, it was like 40 to 60 hours per week of grad school stuff for the last 5 years, and trying to make money on the side, trying to do Grad Life Grind on the side, trying to have friends and go to the gym and whatever. And so it was a lot. And then I see people reach out and they're like, oh, I want to go to grad school. And I'm like, wait, we need to do a lot of prep work and backing up to figure out, like, do you even know what's about to happen in the next 5 years? And that's why I started making content immediately, because I was like, I'm in year 1 and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, I remember being like, what do I wear for my first day of school? Like, what do I even, like, this is not college anymore. Girls are going to school in their pajamas. Like, I need to, like, this is graduate school, right? It's PhD program. So I was like, had so many questions about what to expect even in my first year. What do I expect when I see my first client? I'm sure you've had that conversation with a lot of people. And I was like, there has to be someone who looks like me who's putting this out there, because I was searching on Google, on YouTube, on whatever, and trying to find like clinical psychology PhD student. And back then there wasn't anyone that I could find. I don't want to like discredit anyone who was making content a long time ago. There wasn't anyone that I could find who was doing like day in the life or that. This was 2018, right? So there wasn't anyone doing that. There was no Reels. There was no TikTok. There was none of that. So there wasn't like mini vlogs or anything. There was YouTube, but anyone that I could find was either someone way in their career, like a professor already, and they're going back and they're sharing like tips on how to get into grad school. Cool. Or they didn't look like me. And I was like, I don't even want to watch this. I don't know. I'm looking for the Latinas who are trying to do this. And there just wasn't that. That doesn't mean that there didn't exist. It just means that people making content and doing that like wasn't there. And I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. And so I decided this summer before I moved that as soon as I started, that's what I was going to do. And this September that I started making content on YouTube first and then switched to Instagram because I was tired of editing. And I was like, it just feels so much easier to put stuff out. And in my first year, we didn't have clinical work at all, which is, it depends. I would say that's 50-50. Some PhD programs throw you right in and some don't. But I felt like I'm going to classes and going to classes and going to classes and I'm not giving back yet. And that's why I'm here. And so I was like, if I can't help people by seeing patients and like getting involved in that, then I need to do something that feels like I'm giving and doing something for other people and sharing all this stuff that I'm like mind blown every day I go to school. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this and they're wearing this. And then the conferences and like, you don't get paid to publish your paper and like all this stuff where I was like, there's so much I need to share that I can't wait. Like I remember early on with Grad Life Grind, like waking up every morning, like I need to share about my undergrad research experience. I need to share about my thesis. I need to share about like, there's so many things I did to get here and I don't want to forget it. And then I wanted to have like a little bit of a digital diary too for my family and friends to see like what I was up to. I don't think they get it still to me. But
Well, the doctoras that look like you, they're there. They're out there. They've always been there, right? But it makes me think about why were they not out there? Or even are we biased? Because in our circle, we see you. I know I have a couple other friends that are doing similar work to you. We know mutual people that are doing this work. But I'm thinking about there is this Latina somewhere out there who's maybe sitting still, right? Because we still have an issue of access. We still have an issue of being able to be seen and to be taken serious or to be able to have the platforms and the...
It's scary. And in psychology, it's discouraged. I mean, I had my first year ethics class in my doctoral program. I already had Grad Life Grind, but we had a conversation in class about therapist pages, like the big ones, like Sit with Wit and all these people. And my professor was like, this is unacceptable. Like psychologists have no business having, being online. Like it creates this blurred line between like your personal life and your professional life, and patients are going to search you and then they're going to see your house and they're going to see your partner. And then it's like all this drama. And I was like, I did a whole presentation, like this is my clapback. I did a whole presentation later in the quarter about why I think it's useful to use social media as a therapist and like caveats and things to consider and whatever. Nothing to do with sharing your professional journey online. And I think that's a special niche. Like my content isn't like yours. Like yours is mental health content because you're a licensed provider. I'm not in that spot yet. I'm still working towards licensure. And I think that I do enough mental health stuff and I'm tired. And so I'm like, okay, my content is really about if you want to get to grad school, I'm your academic fixes. Like I got you.
But we have been taught in our field that, the whole blank slate, right?
Yeah, blah,
For
blah.
those of you who are not in the therapy world, there is sort of this belief, sort of foundational to all the field, all the branches of psychology, in which there is a need, right, for clients to be able to project onto us, to make us the space, whatever they need, right? So the blank slate idea is that if they don't know anything about us, then we can become kind of this recipient, this container for whatever they need, right? The more that they know about us, yes, lots of thoughts about that. The more that they know about us, then people kind of start making decisions about, for example, somebody that might be going through a divorce and they see that you're wearing a wedding ring, right? Like, will they feel comfortable talking about their marriage falling apart because they're assuming that you're in a happy marriage, right? So that's why the blank slate thing and fundamental sort of was like built, right? And there are some parts of it that I still believe that are useful and beneficial. Also in this generation that we're in the recognition that what would my life look like if I would have had people to look up to? When all those years that I was all on my own, right? The difference that would have made would have been humongous. I would have had answers for lots of things that I thought were only happening to me. I would have had mentors that were like challenging me or actually reassuring me, validating. Right? We're all so split off and so quiet about who we were because of this blank slate teaching. When I think about the work that you're doing and the work that other kind of this new younger generation is bravely taking the stage while also understanding their limits, while also understanding their boundaries. There is a way to do it. It's just that for a long, long time, this was something really scary. And even for me, starting the podcast
was terrified
like a huge,
in grad school.
It was a big decision to say, like, am I going to publicly share these things about me, the goods and the bads? But kind of going back to our interview, right? Like there is a possibility that you're either romanticizing this journey because you see it shiny on the other side, right?
Like, that's why you'll see me crying.
I have students, right, that I have to remind y'all, like I've been in this field for 15 years. Yeah. Whatever you see me doing cannot be a metric of how you're measuring yourself.
I saw myself driving here because I was like, I just love this. I'm going to Adri's office and like it's gonna be so nice in there because I've already seen the videos and like she's just vibing and we talk a lot about like your schedule and the way that you've designed your life. And then I remember what you told me at my place the other day of like there was 10 years before even becoming a therapist and like just putting in work and doing the things. And so I had to like even remind myself coming here just that you don't always get to have your dream life like immediately. There's actually a lot of groundwork that has to happen and foundation and lessons and other stuff. And we need that. Like I need to see someone like you who's ahead of me in life and in career. And I can see other possibilities for myself other than the like 9 to 5 and like very corporate structure that I'm in now. And I need to remember that it didn't just like fall out of the sky.
And that's why I feel that this duty, right, as a tia now, that I have wisdom, one that I had to acknowledge is like, hey, like I know stuff. I've lived. I like got it figured out in some ways. And I want to share this, right? But how do I do that in a way that still protects me, my boundaries, that still takes care of me, that protects the clients and the people that I work with really intimately, but that also from this perspective of romanticizing, I don't want to be romanticized. Like what it has taken, I graduated from grad school in 2009. Okay. Like what it has taken to get here is short of romantic, beautiful. I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I wouldn't change it for nothing, but it has been a grind that when I see all of you coming up, I'm just like, it's going to get better. I promise it gets better. It just sucks for a little while. And so what you're doing is right now providing that lens too, that if you're going to do this, because we're not saying don't do it because it's hard. Actually, we're saying it is really hard. You can do it. Please go do it. But now we want you to know that if you feel like an imposter, if you feel like your mental health starts suffering because of the pressure, if you're feeling misunderstood, if you're feeling disconnected, if you're feeling discouraged because you don't see anyone that looks like you, we hope that those things don't stop you, but they are going to be presenting some challenges, right? So for you, when did you first realize that this wasn't the romantic journey that you had imagined maybe as this 12, 13-year-old that was like, I'm going to be a psychologist? As kids, we don't have all the information. And so at some point, it's like you come and you're like, dang, I'm doing this. Yeah, 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 exciting. But this is not what I expected. What was that like moment or accumulation of moments where you realize this wasn't made for you? No, didn't mean that you didn't belong, but that it wasn't made for you.
I think there's a lot of little moments where either I realized that it wasn't the room, like this like wonderful, exciting, like I'm just going to do all this research I want to do and like do whatever I want. Moments like that, or moments where I was like, oh, this is a space that was created for people that are really different from me. I think my first flash of like memory when you asked me that question was in undergrad. I went to City College, and what I didn't know is that to get research experience, most people go within the school that they're in. They go to the psychology department, is what you could do if you're trying to figure that out, is you go on the psychology department website and you read all the faculty names, and then you click on their profile and you look at what their research interests are. More often than not, they have a lab. If they're a full professor, they have a lab within that program, within that school, and you can reach out to them and be like, hey, can I work in your lab? And that's how you get a research assistantship. You're not paid 99.9% of the time. I didn't know that, but I learned after a meeting that I had with someone who my parents knew was a psychologist, which was like, again, by the grace of God, I found someone, old white man, who let me sit down with him. We can come back to that. He said you have to get research experience, I think. And that's how I learned that. And so by the time I got to college, I was like, okay, I have my classes and I have a job, but I need to find time to do research experience. And I got an email that was like, hey, clinical research opportunity, but it was outside of school. And I didn't know the standard was you do something in school. So I was like, okay, so I took the job. I made like a 1-year commitment, and it was at a big hospital in New York City, medical school hospital system. And I worked in a CBT for psychosis lab there for close to 2 years. And it was there that I found out that the school, my college, was requiring me to do an honors thesis, and I didn't know. And they were like, you have to do this to graduate because you're an honors student. I was admitted like full ride or whatever. I didn't know about that requirement until I was already like about to graduate. And they're like, you have a year and a half to do this. Like you need to start immediately. And there was a class series. There was like all this stuff. And I was like, no one freaking told me that. My guidance counselor, or whatever her name was, that I like would go to and see, misguided me many times. And I ended up doing extra classes and paying money and like doing stuff. So whatever. I was like, okay, I need to do this research project. How do I do it? And they're like, you have to get a lab. You got to get into a lab in the school. And I was like, I can't. I already am at the lab outside of school. So it was like a whole, sorry, I talk with my hands. There's a whole thing of like, okay, fine, you can have a mentor outside of school, but you also need a mentor in school. And like, we need to like join forces, and we need to have an IRB outside of school, and we need to have like, it was like all this stuff. And I was like, I didn't know. And I was like, great, now I have to find a professor who's willing to be like my kind of like like second mentor, because technically I'm working under this outside person. And so I had one professor who was Latina, and the way I picked her was just looking at the registration and seeing that her name is Teresa Lopez Castro. And I was like, I'm going to take her class. And it was experimental psychology. And I loved her. I loved her from the first day. I was like, this woman takes no shit. People did not like her. Like it seemed like on the Rate My Professor, like people were like, she's harsh. And I was like, she came in and she went over like, don't email me. Don't ask me things that are on the syllabus. Like, don't waste my time. Like just certain energy. And I was like, I love her because don't waste my time. Like I feel for you. And so I was like, she's going to be like my person. And she still is. We meet like probably weekly or monthly now still. And there's so much of my career that I owe to her, but I was able to ask her to be the mentor that I needed at school to make sure that I'm hitting the basics. Teresa has been the person in my career and in my academic journey that has consistently filled the gaps of the people who were supposed to show up for me: professors, supervisors, principal investigators, PIs, people you work under in research. And I have gone to her to be like, this person was supposed to write me this recommendation, but they're not responding, and it's the night before. And she would show up for me. Oh, this person told me that I need to work this amount of hours and I just did it. And she was the one to be like, they're exploiting you. This is not okay. Like, let me write you a letter. Like, she still is a person who's like, this is what you do in this situation. And I had moments when I was doing the research assistantship where I was working 20 hours for free. And I didn't know that like I should get a publication or I should get my name on certain things. And I didn't. And it took me years to reflect back when I was in grad school and be like, they exploited me. And like, I'm grateful for the research experience that helped me get here, but I should have gotten way more out of that. Like when I work with people for my dissertation, like the research assistants I had for my dissertation, I just finished last year. The RA that I had is already published. So it's not a matter of it's difficult, it's hard to do. Like I'm able to do it with like a fresh PhD that I just got and support the people who helped me. then the people who had 20 years of experience that I worked with could have helped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that. So it's those little moments where I was like, oh, you mean I'm not supposed to have to harass you like at 3 o'clock in the morning and be asking you for stuff? And like, I remember distinctly when I was working on my thesis, my mentor was like on a boat in some trip. And I was like, I really need her to answer. I really need help. And she just kind of like left and didn't leave things prepared for me that I needed. And I was like losing my mind. And I was like, there's deadlines in my school and I'm going to graduate, like all of this stuff that I needed, that I was like, this is not it. Like, this is not as romantic and exciting as I thought it was going to be. Research is hard. And I think that without having the one, like one of very few Latina professors in all of like the City College of New York system and City University of New York system, which is like a bunch of colleges. I think there was like at the time like 6 Latina professors that were full professor, and only one of them was at City College. And I was like, she's adopting me. Like she doesn't have a choice. And so if not for her, then what? Like, I think there were a lot of little moments where I went like crying to Teresa about something or someone. Even in grad school, like there was a mentor who took 6 months to let me into a lab meeting and was giving me the wrong meeting times and like doing certain things where I was like, is this racist? Like, is this discrimination? Like, I almost didn't want to believe it. And then I went to her and I was like, this is supposed to be a program that's like supporting underrepresented scientists, and I'm being excluded from the opportunities I'm supposed to have. And I'm feeling like I'm doing something wrong. Yeah. Like, what's good here? And so having just one person, and that's what I think about all the time, is like, I'm being Teresa for thousands of people online. And I know like intimately how she's impacted my life. And so I'm like, okay, perfect. I can do that at such a larger scale online.
What I'm taking away from this kind of part that you just talk about is, one, how sometimes we have a really hard time asking for help, and the difference and the impact that having a person helping us can make, right? We can literally shortcut
just our name on the page. Like, I was like, and I just had this conversation with my partner now where I went to NAMI Latino to speak at a conference in Spanish, which was really hard, but really fun. And I saw my name on the page with all these other people, and I was like, this is what I did this for. Like, for the name to show up and other people to see that. When you're picking courses, like people get to see your name when they're picking courses, and you have to know that they choose you because of that.
Thank you for saying that.
That's what I did.
We're here to help. I think that is the part that I really want y'all to hear, is that we're here to help, because unfortunately we realized that we needed to become who we didn't have. It wasn't for fun, in a fun way, that we found this out. Because as I see you, right, like we're here in the energy, and it's just like, I love you so much, and you're my friend, somebody that I'm like in community with, and like, man, like, this feels heavy to be talking about. And it's not the first time that we talk about.
No,
because it's experiences, even on ourselves, maybe as a survival mechanism, we've had to avoid sitting into how hard this is and how hard this has been and how little guidance and mentorship we have had. And so if you're listening to this, like, we mean it. When I tell folks, like, I got you, right? When we met for coffee, I was like, I got you. Like, I mean it in whatever way. And then you said, you're giving big sis energy. And I was like, I got you. This is like why I'm like the tia, the titi, right? Like, because I really wish that I would have had grown up women to look up to. One other second time that you and I kind of shared space was at that Latina event in the fall, where there was a
Latina Excellence in the Bay every summer.
Yes. And so that day was really powerful for me as a 41-year-old person. A keynote speaker, I don't know if you remember, was a CEO from Planned Parenthood. Yes. I think she was in her 60s or something, and she talked about being childless on purpose, that she chose not to have kids. Intentionally, at that time. And I remember sitting there and being like, it's okay that I don't have kids. It's okay that I'm interested in my career. It's okay, because no matter how old you are, no matter how many hurdles you've been able to overcome, there is something about the relief and the heart to say, like, I'm in the right path. It's okay to be me. I see myself in someone else. And this is a person that I could go and ask questions to. And in that moment, I felt relief.
Yes, totally.
And you would expect that a person at my age, my career, if you see me, my work, teaching, right? Like, I'm this person in leadership positions oftentimes. But this part of us that needs mentorship, that needs connection, that needs like reassurance, doesn't end. And the
validation of like what I'm doing and who I am is okay.
Yeah. And the earlier you can get acostumbrada, or you can make like that openness, asking for help is not a bad thing. Asking for guidance does not make you weaker.
Yeah.
Asking for guidance does not make you less than. In fact, the more that you get like the costumbre, the used to asking for what you need, the easier and the more I see some of young folks nowadays, and they're just like unapologetically asking for what they need. And sometimes it's like a shock in the system, because I'm like, in my day, and I feel so old and so grown and so proud that I can show up differently, because back in my day, you couldn't show up like that to your professors, to the people that were supervising you. And so there is an opportunity here for all of you that are entering our field or any other field, finding mentors, finding people that share your experiences, asking for help.
I think the online world that we have now makes it so much easier. When I got to grad school, I was like, I looked around the room and I was like, I had a big cohort, which is not common. Most PhD cohorts are like as small as 3 to like maybe 10 people, and 10 is big. We had a whole different system going on, but we had like 70 people in the first class, and then they would split you up into small 3. So you had like about 30 people that you were with in every class for the first year. And still, I looked around the room and I was like, there were some Latinos there, and most of them were my friends. And like BIPOC folks, I had like my core group of people immediately from day one, where I was like, okay, we're gonna like bond. But I realized immediately, coming from New York, what's missing in the room is Afro-Latine people, men, and men of color specifically. Just like a distribution of cultures is so much different in New York. Like, there's not just Mexican and Central American. There's Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban, Colombian, Ecuadorian. My family's Ecuadorian. And so everyone was like, Bay Area, so diverse. And I was like, whoa. For me, it's not. And I really appreciate coming with that. And I think here in California, it being very diverse compared to other places in the country, still in meetings and different things that I go to, people are always like stunned with like the things I have to say. And I'm like, I literally just grew up in a different world where there was so much difference, a difference in religion, difference in culture, difference in hair, difference in skin, and difference in everything. And I think it's a superpower, like to be able to have been raised in that environment. And so to have that experience when I got to grad school, I was like, oh, I think that like this is different than what I thought, right? Like in terms of diversity in the room. And it reminded me like, oh yeah, most of psychology is white. We have our little world, right? But then when I got on Instagram and then I got on TikTok, all these different platforms, then it opened my mind to what you said earlier of we're out here. There's Latina doctoras, there's Black doctoras, like there's everybody is out here, but we're spread out. And I needed to see that online because I started to feel isolated in my program. And I was like, oh, okay, we do exist. And then I started to make friends and like connect with people and present at conferences and collaborate on papers with people who are in other parts of the country who share identities with me. And maybe they're in different disciplines, but I needed to see that there are people who do look like me and who are on the same journey, people who are ahead of me, people who are like right on track with me. And I think to do that, I needed to see people outside of the classroom. So like if you're in a cohort or you're in a classroom where you're like, or you're at a PWI, predominantly white institution, and you're like, I don't know if this is for me. I think the question is, where are the rest of my people? Because we're there, we're just going to be a little bit harder to find for now. And then, I mean, we're working with the next generation of professionals and mental health. And so the field is diversifying, but it's going to take a really long time.
And the truth is that 70% of the psychology field is white women. And that is something that I really wish I would have known. It would have made a difference, because then it's scary because there is so many assumptions. One of I don't think I've shared this experience before, but one of the times that I felt like almost like depression, but also judgment about my own background was when I was in grad school, and all our families, BIPOC families, were being measured up to like middle class, affluent white families. And in that moment, I didn't have the critical sort of lens to say, wait a minute, like, systemic oppression, this and that, right? In that moment, I just remember feeling like my family wasn't good enough. And that was so sad, and that was so scary.
I would have never been able to survive graduate school in that time period.
You wouldn't have.
I'm just a baby. So I'm just a girl.
I mean, from that moment to the next moment where I was wearing this baby blue checker sweater, and the professor was just like, it's too much, it's too colorful. I did not wear hoops. I did not wear bright nail colors, polish, bright colors in my clothing for years, because this white man pulled me into his office and sat me down and said, this is a concern that I have, that the way that you dress is too distracting for the clients. Like, you run the risk of making the session about you and like about what you're wearing, how you're presenting. In those moments, right, it's just like, oh my God, like in that moment, it wasn't, what the hell are you saying? Fuck you, right? Yeah. Right now, catch me with that. Yeah, catch me with that now. Catch one of my students, somebody saying that to them, I'm burning, all of this down. But in those moments, I felt like I needed to change. I was the wrong person, that I was in the wrong family, that I had the wrong background, that I had the wrong all these things. And it felt like I just needed to change and make up for all my shortcomings, compensate, right? So change and compensate. And now that I'm online, now that I have like all these people that like love me, that I love back, that see me, that I admire, that they're in the same field as me, I'm like, being me is my superpower. 100%. Being me is like what makes me special. Being me is what gives me the authority to not only have this degree, but also this lived experiences. But this has been like years in the making to come to this place where being me is okay, because for a long time in this field, because of the 70% white women, and then all the men that are in the very most higher positions in this field, they're gatekeeping us and they're criticizing our background, our families, our experiences. That has an impact into our well-being and our mental health.
Yeah, I think that we talk about this a lot when we meet about like the generational difference. Starting grad school in 2019, you finishing in 2009, like even a 10-year gap is so different. I felt, even though I knew it would be maybe an eyebrow raising thing, I felt like I have a picture still of my first week of grad school where I put my hair up, like slicked back up and the hoops, and I wore a shirt that said Chula and red lipstick, and I was like, I'm doing this. And that was like, nobody knew what Grad Life Grind was. Nobody knew who I was. I don't think still anyone knows who I am. It was just for me to be like, I don't care like who's in the room or whatever, I'm here. And once I got into the program, I did have a little bit of feeling of like, no one's going to take me out. And there are ways that systematically grad school students are removed and from their programs and encouraged to leave and stuff like that. But I felt like once I got there, I was like, you're going to have to drag me out. I'm finishing with this degree. And for that reason, because I know that I earned it to be here and I'm already got my foot in the door, and frankly, you want the money that I'm going to pay to be here, then I'm going to be me. But I don't think I would have felt that way 10 or 15 years prior. Still, I was nervous about being online. I was nervous about certain things. Earlier, when you asked me about like some of those critical moments of like, this isn't for you, it brought what you were saying about your blue checkered shirt brought me back that when I was doing PhD interviews, I actually got an interview at City College where I was a student. And so I was like, oh my God, like my alma mater is like interviewing me for the PhD program. And then Teresa worked in the PhD program. And so she would tell me like, here's the interview question that they're going to ask you. Like she prepped me and everything. And I still have a lot of the business clothes that were my mom's. So like now that I'm on postdoc, my first day of work, I wore one of my mom's shirts as like a homage. But back then I like for real didn't have clothes. So I would wear my mom's like old office clothes. And I had one suit and it was hers and it was navy. I think I gave it back because now your girl doesn't fit in it. But my mom's really, really petite. And at that time, we were a similar size. And so I wore that suit and it was the only one that I had. And when the interview was over, it's like this excitement of like, I think I did well. Like, I think it was good. And I was like, where do I go now? Right? Like I'm in this outfit and I think I had like a class later. And so I had time to kill. So I went to my academic advisor or whatever who helped me pick my classes. And she was a white woman and she discouraged me of applying to grad school. And I feel like sabotaged some of my classes and stuff, but whatever. I went there to be like, I just had this interview and like, it was great. And I still remember the moment that this woman got on her computer and typed some stuff and then turned her monitor towards me to show me like Macy's or something, suits that I should be wearing. And she said, the one that you have on right now, I just came from a PhD interview, right? Which is like it felt at the time like 1 in a million. I think it still is. Turned her monitor to say, I think she said how to go and whatever, like the niceties you do at the beginning, but I didn't feel like she was happy for me. And she turned her computer to show me suits that were less form-fitting because she was concerned that the pants that I was wearing were too tight, and they were tight. But she was like, the way that this suit you're wearing fits your body is not appropriate. And I think you should consider some of these. And I like, first of all, I can't afford what she's showing me on the screen. Can't afford anything. That's why I'm wearing my mom's clothes. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll look into that. When I got home and I told my mom, I lived with my grandma at the time, but my mom would come like multiple times a week and we'd have dinner. And my mom was like, how'd the interview go and all stuff. And I'm like, oh, I was good. And I went. And then I went to my advisor and she told me like I should get a different suit. And she said that what I'm wearing is like too fitted. And like her face, because like my mom's like, okay, I've been in corporate. Like my mom worked in law firms in the 90s, which is like basically here's your sexual harassment. So she was like, that's discrimination. Like she's being prejudiced and she's discriminating because of your body and like because you're curvy and because you're Latina. And I never let that go. Like I always was like, it's like, is this dress, is this skirt, or like, can I wear this? And I had been experiencing that as early as high school, where like the dress code was different for white girls and people who had different bodies than for me and other people that I was friends with. And so I just remember internalizing that like it matters more what I'm wearing than my achievement to certain people. And I think if my mom hadn't been angry and my mom hadn't had her own experiences where she could be like, oh, hell no, I would have internalized it even more.
I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm livid.
Yeah. And I was 19 years old, maybe 20 years old. I was really young when I was like applying to grad school and stuff.
And this is what systemic oppression at the end of the day is.
Mostly.
Interpersonal systemic oppression.
Especially women. Between, I mean, we know that. We know with kids that like girls are more likely to bully in like an emotional way. It doesn't end, unfortunately. And yeah, so there's a lot of moments like that where people now reach out to me and they're like, what should I wear to my interview? I'm like, wear the orange suit, wear the red suit. Like now I have a red suit, I have a pink suit, I have a purple suit. And now I feel like validated that I could do that. I maybe wouldn't go to grad school interview that way, but I tell people like, wear what you feel good in. Because if you're this big personality, the way that I am, I haven't worn a black suit in years. Because I think they're boring and it drowns me out as a person. And I'm like, I don't want to feel confined by being in this like thing that everyone is wearing because that's what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. And I did that. I did that already and I paid my dues in that area and I'm not doing it anymore.
And professionalism is white supremacy hidden in the workplace, hidden in the education, academia spaces.
So I put on these today. I had little tiny gold hoops that I wear, those like my daily. And then I was like, something doesn't look right.
But so something that you said, this discrimination, this people, this women is not unique to our experiences. I'm sure that some of you are listening and you're like, me too. And we know and we're sorry. And that's why we're talking about it, because we also need you to know that it's not okay and that you have the right to stand up and ask, why are you speaking about my outfit right now?
I wish I had that. Like now I think I could be like, what makes you say that? But there are a lot of moments. I did a post about this last year or the year before as well. I can remember being as young as 6th or 7th grade where a boy in my class who was white, which was the minority in my class, in all of my schooling in New York, had the audacity to tell me and my 2 Latina best friends at the time that we are the type of girls that you and white girls, specifically from his country of origin, are the ones you bring home to your parents. And we all were pretty outspoken and we were like livid about it at the time. And we knew like right away that was wrong. We definitely argued with him and went back and forth. But the way that has marked me for so long, like the sexualization of Latina girls and women and how it's either or. Like how many times in my life people have been surprised to know that I have a doctorate. How many times in my life people were surprised that I got good grades. How many boys in school were surprised to see my report card on a report card day. And like the shock. Now I live for that, but it does something. I'm like, there's a dissonance here that this is surprising to you.
Because we get comfortable. Like sometimes I forget. Sometimes, I mean, this is just my life, right? Like every day I'm living my life. And last year I was teaching. There was something wrong with the projector, and I went to the office assistant, and I was like, "Hey, da da da," and I just assumed that I didn't have to say I'm so and so, da da da, right? I just assume I look a little bit older. Everybody else is on the younger side, and I need help and everything. And her answer was just like, "Who's your professor?" Because usually we don't take requests from students, and I had to like it was like a whiplash. Like,
yeah.
And I remember I was wearing my Doc Marten sandals. I was wearing overalls, and I had like this like orange shirt. And I remember like doing like a quick scan, and I said, "No, I'm the professor."
Period.
And she just kind of like looked at me, right? And then I was just like, "No, I am the professor, and I'm coming here to ask. And it doesn't matter what I'm wearing and what I look like."
No.
But those moments are so like whiplashy. Yeah, they're just like they surprise you, because I assume some days that this is not going to happen anymore, and then I'll be in like a meetup with colleagues. This just happened a year ago, where a white therapist here in the local area talked about reverse racism with me. I remember that I told you, and I like turned around and I was just like, I don't think I'm the right audience for that conversation that you're wanting to have. I
love that.
What makes you think I'm not the right audience for this, right? But these moments will continue to happen. And now those moments like fuel me with the rage and with like, fuck it. I'm going to go do it because you don't think.
Exactly.
I'm going to talk about this because you're talking about reverse racism. That shit don't exist. Let me talk about racism.
It's sad that it's going to keep happening. I was at the doctor like 2 weeks ago, and it was cold. So when I went in, I had like a crew neck from Latina Grad Guide that says Latina Scholar on it. And I was putting that on over like my tank top or whatever in the waiting room. And these two men were sitting in front of me. One was young, one was older, one Latino, one white. The younger one was like, ¿Qué país? And I was like, oh, well, mi familia es del Ecuador. And then he was like, oh, because I think he's like foreign born. And so he kind of was like, you're not Latina because you're American, whatever. And so he gave me a certain energy, and I was like, anyways. And then I put on this shirt, and the white man who's older was like, show off. I swear. Because I think the younger one was like, oh, what did you get your degree in or something like that? And I was like, oh, I just did my PhD in clinical psychology. And the older man really sat there boldly and looked me in my face and said, show off. And he was trying to like make a joke, but you're not joking.
It's not a joke.
You're insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And then his name was called and he left. And I was like, is this real life?
Yep. And so if you hear that, if that happens to you, we want you to know that it's not okay. And that if you need validation,
I was like, I'll write the angry email.
Come to us. We will be angry with you and for you. We'll help you write the email. We'll help you with the words. But even just validating that these experiences are going to happen and that we don't want them to be discouraging because the system is already hard enough.
Yeah, I think I have ethical concerns about that. Like, I spend a lot of my time and energy and money investing in Grad Life Grind to support the next generation of graduate students, helping primarily like BIPOC and other minoritized groups get into graduate school. And then my heart kind of breaks. I'm so excited when people DM me and they're like, I got in and thank you so much and all this stuff. And I'm like, brace yourself. Because it's about to be a hot mess.
We're going to keep it real. And also we're going to cheer you on and encourage you because kind of coming back to the topic of the interview. So I've been asking my guests, like, name the interview. What would you name it? So that I can have an idea of like what we're going to talk about. And what you said is that we, the Tías and Amiguis, we're creating the path and we're creating. This is what we're creating. The part that we just spoke about, this is what we're creating because it's a necessity for our survival, for our validation, for demanding and creating, elbowing that space that I know that I felt trapped in for many, many years. And now it's just like, no, not only do I get to extend my elbows out, my arms out, and now when my arms are out, I get to bring people in with me.
Yeah.
So a couple of things, right? Don't get discouraged. It's going to be hard. You belong here. We need you. Other people are going to be looking at you the way that maybe you're looking at us and that we're looking at each other, right? And so Tías and Amiguis, we're making this happen. The Amiguis, we're in the trenches together. The titis, the tías, the señoras, right? Like we're trying to say, just, it gets better.
Yeah,
come over here. So what inspired you to think about the message that you wanted to live, this idea of like that we can create what we need and that there'll be sadness and maybe some disappointment in that, but nonetheless, we can and should be creating it.
I think the impact that certain people, by being the representation I needed, the impact that they've made in my life, and then the impact I've seen, and I'm grateful and humbled to have seen Grad Life Grind make, is what continues to remind me of this message. And as I've been thinking about speaker topics, like what my signature speeches would be, which is something I'm working on. You can book me. The message that the story that keeps coming back to me, as much as I could talk about, here's how to get into grad school and like make it very teachy and workshoppy, I think what's inspiring and what keeps knocking on my door that I need to speak about is we can create, and we do create, doors that were not there. So a lot of people in all disciplines and of all backgrounds knock on certain doors, and for some people it's open to them. For some people it's shut in their face. For some people, they have to keep knocking and keep asking and keep going and keep trying to get in the door. And for us, I think specifically for Latinas in psychology and in that higher ed space, there has not been a door. Like, I didn't have the feeling that like, oh, I know which door to knock on and I know who to ask. It was like, this is a brick wall. And so I'm going to get to work with my tools and with the things that I have and the people in my corner and the wisdom and the generational knowledge and all the stuff that I have. And so to me, I'm proud of being the first in my family to go to college. I'm proud of getting a PhD. I'm proud of the research I do. I'm proud of the therapist I've become. I'm proud of a lot of things, but I'm most proud that what was not there, I could bring to life. And I think all of us can do that.
All of us can. All of us can. I wish that we would have left clear doors,
I know.
behind.
But I had the blueprint.
Yes,
I had the blueprint.
because it's like the kind of imagery that came to my mind was like being in like a forest that doesn't have that. On the other side there is this like beautiful like well that is going to be amazing, but you're so busy just chopping in front of you so that you can take the next step, that we didn't have it in us at those times, or the tools or the knowledge that we also needed to kind of be like both, right? And that's the extra work of us as Latinas in this kind of space, BIPOC folks, queer folks.
Such a superpower is that like Latinas consistently create what's not there. All of the Latina creators that I'm friends with, we've presented on how academic Instagram is now a coined term that was coined and published by Latina scholars. The idea that social media could be a virtual counter space, which has origins in Lat Crit, right, and critical race theory, that we could create an online space that bridges the gaps that don't exist on campuses for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Grad Life Grind is, and a lot of other platforms are this now. Latinas consistently, and in all spaces, again, I keep mentioning NAMI Latino last week, there were so many women much older than me who got up and spoke about how many years they knocked on doors at NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Health, to create Spanish programming. And the door was shut in their face, and the door was shut in their face, and the door was shut in their face. And so for me, it was like, que emoción to be able to speak there because of the work that those women did for the last 10 to 20 years. That's what I mean. Like, that is our superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Those were a room full of tias and señoras. To me, it was so emotional to speak to a room full of my grandma, like full of people who I went to doctor's appointments with and I, spent time with and who picked me up from school. That's what it felt like. And so to do that is like, oh, this is another proof that for generations Latinas have created something out of quote unquote nothing, but it's actually like the everything that we have inside and all of the wisdom and lessons and burdens and gifts. And so that was the message of like, it's not just me, it's not just you, it's like Latinas just do. We just create stuff and bring life to something that looks like a dead situation, that looks like a dead end.
And I'm glad that we're in a position now where we can gather, because that's what the online space has given the opportunities to gather. People are going to be mad about it because we were not supposed to be talking about this stuff. We were supposed to be isolated in our own corners, being sad, being angry about these things. And then now when we understand that we're going through it, right? Like we're creating the counter to those feelings, spaces. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. What do you think little Aeriell would be excited, proud to be seeing about what you're doing in your life right now?
I think something I've been reflecting on lately and that she would be excited to hear is that I get to do whatever my dreams are without limitations that the generations before me had. I talk about this often. Like, my grandma wanted to be a pilot and my mom wanted to be a lawyer. But systems of oppression, things like patriarchy and sexism and racism and discrimination and all these things got in the way. And those things got in my way too. But because of their sacrifices, I was able to push past those things. And now I get to do everything that they maybe wanted to do but couldn't, or were worried about, like que dirán, or money, or other things. And it doesn't mean that it's easy for me to do all those things or that I don't have a little bit of like guilt, but I can. And I think that younger me would love to see, like, you get to live out your dreams and the dreams of everybody before you. And that's really powerful. And it inspires other people to do the same. Like, I think about how countercultural both my mom and my grandma were at the time. Like, I think there are a lot of older women who never were able to live on their own, or like my grandma was the first one in her family to get a divorce and it was this like scandal, and she lived on her own with another woman friend for most of my life. And I realize now how like crazy that was at that time and how cool that was. Like, that my grandma painted her own apartment and she laid her own floors down and she did her own stuff, and there was a lot she didn't get to do because of those systems. And now I just saw her recently and she was like, La Doctora Armas. And I was like, this is just insane. Like, this is insane. And I think younger me would barely even be able to wrap her head around that.
What is the Titi legacy that you're trying to leave?
I think my niece is showing me so much about joy that I don't need to teach her anything. Like, I think that I'm learning so much from her that I want her, and I think I want everyone who considers me their titi to hold on to their joy. I think a lot of what academia and the fast track and the rushing and all the things that I was doing was that it watered down my joy a lot of times and the childlikeness that I feel like I have now. And I was reclaiming that throughout my grad journey, where I was like, oh, I'm actually like really fun and really silly and I think social media helped me with that. I think healing and therapy helped me with that. I think doing a lot of trauma work helped me with that. I think that the people around me, I think my niece, I think all the people who look up to me, I think the best thing that I could give them is just holding on to their joy, like that we get to keep a little bit of childlike wonder about everything that we do. What do you think?
I mean, that's it. That's what we talk about in our
I
other
just hope to
conversation.
just hope to reflect that back to
Mhm.
her. Like I see my
Yeah.
niece is 2 right now, so she's just like everything's amazing and like she's
Yeah.
so free and she's so excited and it makes me emotional because I'm like I don't remember like how I was at that age, but I don't know if I was that free. And now I can feel that way. And I'm like, I think I just want to always remind her to be free and joyful, like that everything is amazing if you look at it with the right eyes and even hard things. And so I'm just like, maybe I'll just get to remind her of that as she gets older and life gets harder and things happen and things are discouraging. Because now I look back and I'm like, there was so many years in my life that I was just like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And now I'm like, there's so much joy here. And I don't know how much joy I missed because of how hard I was working. So
I'm getting teary-eyed as I hear you speak because as a new titi in your life, I think that I feel the same way as you feel about your niece. You know, I see you grinding so hard and I'm so proud of you. And I'm so glad that this part is coming to an end because I do look forward to you being able to put some of this loads down because not only have you been living it, but you're also been living it to help others. And you also are building this beautiful life for you.
Yeah.
And that joy that you're talking about for your niece, I want that for you. I want that for me. I want that for all of us because survival and the grind and the going and all the messages direct and indirect that we've received, they're heavy, they're burdensome at times, they're exciting, they're beautiful, and they're adventures. All of it sometimes disconnects us from our joy. And so this is just a reminder of no matter how much you're grinding down,
resistance.
joy is resistance.
I think not only do certain people and entities not want to see us here, they definitely don't want to see us happy doing it. And so I think that's a motivating thing for me a lot of times where it's like, I'm going to do this and go to Hawaii and do all the things. I think I did that pretty well in grad school because of being online and different factors that made it possible for me to do a lot of cool stuff while I was in grad school. And it was really hard and it was a lot of tears and it was a lot of mental breakdowns, but I had fun and I am having a lot more fun now that it's over. But I think that's even more powerful that I'm not just like skating by and like barely crawling through, although there were seasons like that, but I'm doing everything that you intended for me not to be able to do. And in all the spaces that you hoped I would never be able to set foot in. And I'm happy. Like, that's awesome.
Resistance is resistance. Cheesy as it sounds, right? But it is what it comes back to is that we existing and we pushing through and we enjoying this life. So we put in so much sweat and work into creating is at the end what we get to leave behind. And so for all of you that are in the middle of it all, whatever stage that you're in, just remember to hold on to your joy from your titi Aeriell. Doctora Aeriell.
Yeah, I'm like, do I go by like titi doctora or doctora titi? I'm still working on
Doctora Titi, that'd be so cute.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my niece to do that. We just got titi down, so we'll see. That's what I need in my life.
Well, to test it out and kind of make it official, thank you so much, Doctora Titi. It's such an honor to have you here. I'm so grateful for your friendship and I admire you so much. And my 27-year-old self feels watching you and reminds me of just like, oh man, what a girl. What a girl. And so we're proud of you. Keep working hard and don't give up because that's what they want from us. And we won't.
This was so much fun and I hope I'll be back. I think you should like comment or like harass Adri if you want me back. I know you do.
We will. I want you back. I want to have this more conversation.
I feel like every time we talk, we need a mic.
We're going to start doing that.
Yeah, we're going to have a sleepover with mics. We're going to do everything with mics on.
It's happening.
Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. Thank you for being here. Until next time, Entre Tías y Amiguis. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your tías and amiguis. Your support helps us reach more people and continue these important conversations. And don't forget to follow us on social media and stay connected. Until next time, remember to take care of yourself, embrace your journey, and keep living life with heart, vision, and creativity.